talk about this particular subject and its critiques and criticism in our indie community, not just indie comics, but Black indie comics specifically. Again, I think it's a very important conversation to have. So I wanted to get it started. Obviously, you guys can see, you go around. We got Imani Latif, Malachi Bailey, Jason Reeves. I'm going to bring in Mike Pitts. And we may have a couple other people pop in and out throughout this conversation. But I really want to get it going because I think that it's going to be a conversation that it's not going to be solved, obviously, in this one podcast. But there's a lot of depth to it, and I know a lot of us have a lot of opinions and a lot of things to say. So I want to start it off by saying this was spurred on uh, by a comment thread that was started in the Facebook group Black Comic Lords. I'm going to post up the the comment here. And the reason I'm doing that is because, as far as the group is concerned and as far as the post is concerned, it was actually public, right? So I'm not trying. I don't want to go in here. I'm not shaming anybody. This was the subject of this entire thing, and it was put out there for the world's consumption, right? So it's fair game by their own standards. So it says, this is from Ronald Mitchell, and it was like hot take slash unpopular opinion slash trigger questions, I guess. Why do you all not judge Black indies the same way you do Marvel and DC? As I read through these Black indies, I'm noticing more and more issues. Everything ranging from font issues, pacing problems, art issues, and structural problems story wise. There seemed to be a lack of honesty about the quality of actual stories. There's a difference between being a hater and being critical. It feels like in the Black comic space, we only want to be critical when dealing with the big two, but never with our own. We talk about representation and supporting our own, but if the quality isn't up to snuff, then are we really being represented? Real critique points out good, if any, the bad, if any, and tries to balance those things out. I often feel as if Black comic creators don't really want honest feedback from fans. Many people feel as if they are not qualified because they don't make comics they shouldn't speak. In that regard, we don't make music or movies, but still critique anyway. Lastly, how does Black comic space get better? If it only wants to hear praise, we have to offer critique to the level that we say they can reach. Excuse me. Raise the bar, not lower it. I got a ton to say. We also got uh, another harbinger of blackness. That's the perfect name. Coming in to give their opinion. So I'll wait for everybody else because I've been thinking about this all week, honestly. Just really going back and forth with myself about the entire treatise there and the resulting conversation. So I know Amani and I talked about it kind of online and offline a little bit. So I will let you start, bro. We'll just kind of go around and see what everybody has to say just about the general posting and what we feel about that.
Um, well, yeah, I'll start it off. Um, it's interesting. Like ever since that conversation, I've actually been talking to a lot of folks, a lot of reviewers, mainly. Actually, been talking to Ron about his ideas too. And so, from that standpoint, and just so you know, my name is Imai Latif. I run a website called Black Comics Universe, and I actually do review indie comics or critique indie comics. So that's the context where I come in. But basically, he brings up a very interesting point as far as it does feel like um, the Black indie community is kind of hands off when it comes to reviews, or typically they may not be handle reviews very well, or critiques, I should say, critiques very well. But I know personally, if I've had, for the most part, a fairly, good and genuine experience in terms of reviewing folks. They seek me out and respect and look forward to my opinion. So that's where I kind of come in to the whole conversation.
You muted, Brian.
Bro, I suck at this, man. I'm a creator, not a fucking host. Jesus. Uh,
Wrong.
sorry.
You're
Uh,
wrong.
Jason, I was turning it over to you anyway, as a
Ah,
matter of fact. So,
okay. I'm Jason Reeves of 133R Publishing. I make and create indie comics, and I've been publishing since 2012, and I've been sort of in and around the industry as a freelance illustrator since 2006. I've loved comics my entire life, cartoons, and all kind of nerdy media. So that's where I'm coming from with it. We just introducing ourselves, or are we like saying things?
sorry, we're commenting on. So, after having read the original post and seen the
Okay.
original post, what's our initial
Initial
take?
thoughts.
Again,
Okay,
because we're going to dive in further, but
gotcha.
what's our initial take?
My initial take is that the premise is kind of off to me. I think the first thing that kind of was glaring to me is based on this assumption that our work is not critiqued, or that it's not critiqued as hard as Marvel and DC, and it seems like there's there's always that assumption, and there's always this idea that because the loudest critiques comics wise is for the big two, that that's all people ever do. And I would push back on that and say that our critiques are not just not just in the public sphere, not just in the public square, but even at shows when people walk past our table. That's a glaring critique already. You know what I'm saying? There's also uh there's that wall that people judge us by,
Mhm.
just sight seen, that's already there. So to me, that would be a harder critique than seeing
Right.
Spider-Man and buying it first
Yeah.
and then judging it on whatever merits it should be judged on. So that was my initial take. The premise is like off. And there's a big assumption that we and others don't already critique our work and don't do it hard enough.
Mal, you're next, man. You're on the hot seat, bro.
Cool. So first off, good morning, everybody. It's been a minute since we've actually had something like this, and everybody's bold and beautiful. So hello. So many of you guys know that I am Malachi Bailey. I'm part of Wingless Comics. I'm the father of her, the occasional bane of Brian's existence, and all that good stuff. So this has been a topic that he and I have been discussing now for the better part of 4 years. Um, it's kind of sad. You kind of laugh at it, but at the same time, it's like as Black people, we are always under the spotlight, and we are always supposed to do it better and bigger. And once we do it, people want to steal that, right? Um, Indie comics as a whole, it is a labor of love. And many of us don't have the money that DC and Marvel has. So we can't do an issue every month. We can't do an annual every year. We can't do a movie, at least in this lifetime. So when we take the funds that we have, whether it's crowdfunding or whether it's your own personal savings, because that's what we do, we put it out there and we know that it's going to be critiqued, but we would also want it to be critiqued fairly. And that post that you shared, it just seems very off kilter. Um, I'm trying to find parts of it what I can, so that I can appreciate it, but I'm finding that very hard because if you're not in our shoes, if you're not producing a comic book, if you're not hiring an artist and a colorist, an inker, someone to do letters, there are some things that may get lost, but like I've been saying all along, we need some grace. The same grace that you give Marvel when they did the Spider Clone saga back in 1995, the same grace that you gave them when Superman came back as the what was he, like the electric costume back in 1997. So, please, give us a fraction of that, because I'm sure that the stories that we're going to tell you are probably more original and more authentic. But that's just something that I've noticed. The people like that, this is why I pretty much avoid a lot of those groups, because it's either just a versus topic, which is so mind-numbingly tired, or it's someone who's talking out of their ass. So those are my initial thoughts.
Ron, it's on you, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
So I'm Deron Flood, the harbinger of blackness. How do I fit into this big old puzzle? I'm a big fan. As everybody here knows, I've literally bought everybody's comics. I've kickstarted everybody's comics 2, 3, 5 times over. About 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to host a con of my own, and so it materialized this August. I am the host of Atlantic Comic Con, and 3 of the panelists here were guests at my show, and it was an amazing show. And we're looking forward to 2025. Just a little bit about, like, I am not nice, right? Like I'm not a nice guy at all.
Not wrong.
I'm very,
No.
very abrasive, and rub me the wrong way. I have no problem addressing those things brashly. And my initial thought was full on defense mode. This is super disingenuous. And while I do not create comics, I have 3 or 4 businesses that does really well. And I see that same type of rhetoric on all fronts of business. Black folks piling on Black business. And my first question is, what have you done to contribute to a solution? That's the first thing. Like, before I decided I wanted to do a convention, I wanted to build relationships with creators. That was before I even started buying stuff. And then even then, I wanted creators to know that I'm there for them. Like, nobody can question whether or not if I'm down for the cause, if I'm being genuine or not. Even if I decided I wanted to do a critique. If I decide I want to do a critique right now, nobody will have any pushback. Nobody. And so, like, I don't even know who Ronald is. And I think that's a part of the problem. Like, who are you, bro? You know what I'm saying? What have you done beyond you wanting to say that, need to be critiqued, unmasked, especially when you generalize things like that? Like, I think it's very, very, very harmful to a lot of people who are trying the best that they can. And like I said, while I've never created a comic, I've always been a big fan since the early 90s, but I do a lot of business. And I see the exact same things from consumers about Black businesses. And maybe it's a one-off experience and then they generalize all Black businesses, or it's just to show people that I have contributed to something. So now that gives me the means to be hypercritical about it. Like, I'm going to show people, now that I'm standing in this Black space, that I'm here, now I can be hypercritical about it. I think that there's better solutions to help a problem. And so for me, because I know that indie creators need all of the support that they can get, one, I decided to put my money where my mouth is. And literally, half the time, I don't even know folks that have books. And I just support them just because they're Black. Literally. I see it on my timeline. I look at the story or whatever they're pulling out. I throw $25 to it. Beyond that, the evolution of that is holding a convention where everybody can eat. Like, make money. And so, like, behind the scenes, it's like, sure, this is an opportunity for me, but like, the weight of an entire community is on my back. And I want to do the best that I can to support these people by putting thousands of people in front of them. And so, like, there isn't enough of that. There isn't enough people putting money and effort, like actual effort, into our communities. And so, without being long-winded, that's my take. I think it was disingenuous. I didn't like it at all, and I actually had choice words for them, and then I kind of pulled back because I know how I can be.
All right. Well, you and I are on the same page, Jerron. So I'll save the rest of my comments for when I get in. Mike, will do you, and then we'll follow up with Danny, and then I'll have my own comments.
Cool. Y'all hear me okay? Okay, cool. So I'm Mike Haynes Pitts, the author of the Surge series, rocking the shirt right now, Afrofuturistic Cyberpunk book series. And I thought this was very interesting as someone who my bachelor degree is in actually film and media critical analysis. So actually have some, it was interesting when Brian was mentioning credentials when reviewing this, and I realized I was like, oh, I actually genuinely have college essays and papers of credentials of this. So yeah, all the points said before definitely really apply. I really like Jason's point of like when someone passes you by, like that is an immediate, critique. As someone who has had plenty of Black people pass by the books, even though all my covers have a lot of dark-skinned Black people even on them. So, and that doesn't like matter even to like interest, because it sometimes is like, hey, someone next to me might be doing their own art version of Spider-Man or Batman, and they'll go there because like, hey, this is something I know, versus let me take a chance on what you're doing here. So that's an important thing overall. But then you also get, general critiques, which I've gotten a couple on the books, and I will critique my early books for sure. Like my editor was like, what is going on in the early books? And then there's been improvement overall, but that is a critique that not everyone would know, right? Like the average person doesn't know all that critique. It tends to be a lot more personal, as we've said, unless you get in a viral situation, right? Like where you have something in the case of what Robert was saying, where you end up with a viral situation where the critique is out loud. Usually our critiques are way more personal from people we know, whether it's a positive or a negative. It's like, hey, maybe you need to work on this. Like when I learned I should probably put in glossaries, I'm writing sci-fi books with their own terminology. And someone was like, it's kind of hard to figure out the structure because I don't know all these words. And I was like, hey, let's put a glossary. Like that is a fantastic critique, but like not everyone knows that critique happened, right? Like, because that's not out loud and in the public zone. And then because we're indie and we're not big, we're not going to get all the critiques. So there are critiques that nobody ever will see because like we're indie. Like we're trying to get, I think a lot of people are not even in the indie space to become super, super famous. I think some of them might want it like from some economic support in their regard, but then also like to do it, right? Like it was an enjoyment to write those books. Like I love writing the books. I love my characters. Like it's literally like I'm not always concerned about, am I making the most money? Does everybody know them? No, this is really fun. Like I like it's really it's really joyful to do. And I think that's important because the other two, the big two we all talk about, are so commercial, and it's kind of like everybody can critique them because we all can see them. But in indie books, there might be someone who might love or hate your thing, and you have no idea who that person is. And you're never going to know who that person is because you're just not as well known. And I think it's important for that lens, and even knowing where people are in terms of who can critique this, who can have that opinion. As Brian's post was saying, like, where do you come from in terms of coming with these critiques? Do you have this experience? Do you have the knowledge? Have you even reviewed the material? And yes, what Duran said, with business or otherwise, as someone who has some other avenues I've done some business in, we critique ourselves the most, always. And it's kind of it's a double-edged sword, right? Because on the one hand, who knows us better than us, right? Like I would, a white person critiquing my work is very different than a Black person critiquing my work. Like it's a completely different mindset. And then for me, because of who I am in my books, the LGBTQ person critiquing my books is a different mindset than someone who's straight. And that comes into play versus, the big two, everyone has the say in it in a sense. So you feel like everyone has a chance to have the opinion, versus people who really don't understand what we're doing and can understand the viewpoint and even the perspective to have the right to critique that. Because it's like, where do you get off on even knowing who we are in a sense? And yeah.
Agreed. Danny, it's on you, sir.
What's up, everybody? Y'all, I think I know most of y'all. That's my name is Danny J. Quick. I'm the writer and co-creator of Ace Blade, and I agree with all of y'all. First of all, for me, because of that post that we're talking about, I did a little graphic that said if you want to support indie comics, there's three main things you can do. You can buy their comics, read their comics, and talk about their comics, right? Those first two come first though. So if you buy it and you actually read it, then please talk about it. Please, share your opinions on it, whatever. Cool. Good or bad, like everybody said. For me, I want the critiques. The I want the negative critiques online because I know that stuff gives more weight. But only because I know that I'm in a kind of unique situation. I have a larger platform that I can use those critiques to further market my comic books, right? I know that for me, being able to use somebody's critique and then also, you know, improve my comics if it's a valid critique and, maybe even take it and improve on my comics, is valuable to me in the market that I'm in because I talk about comics. I talk about, how to make comics and things like that. But I know um, everybody does not have that kind of personality where they are going to take a negative critique and, either, just let it go or, use it for something. A lot of these negative critiques, especially online with these loud voices, can crush like an indie creator. So I think we have to be careful when we come with negativity because of that, because most people in the indie space are not marketers. They are not, like we said, we're not trained to deal with situations like that in a positive way. And we have to be careful with that. For me, I always say, I'm going to talk about the stuff that I enjoy. Like all of y'all, I back a lot of comics on Kickstarter. And if it's black, I'm just going to back it. You know what I'm saying? If it's a black comic, I'm going to support it. I'm gonna give it at least one or two issues, you know what I'm saying? And if I enjoy it, I'm probably gonna put more energy into talking about the things that I enjoy than the things that I don't. Because we know they're not all great, they're not all good, but they are all trying. They're all trying to make something, and that's special. So for me, like I said, I welcome the critiques, I welcome the conversations around it because I know that it can be used for content and to further market. Um, your IP, but we do have to be careful when we come with negativity, especially in our communities, because for some reason it just seems like the negativity just draws so much. You know what I'm saying? It just draws so much attention, and it doesn't. And that negativity doesn't always lead to sales and increase in production. So we have to be careful about it.
Okay. Let me grab something real quick. Because in order to give what I feel about this, you know what I'm saying, I got to bring out the glove. Because I want to Thanos snap the fuck out of that entire comment thread, right? Like, it just, again, I understand and I appreciate y'all. Y'all are being very professional and everybody's being nice about things. Fuck that thread. Because that thread is made in bad faith, right? I don't have a problem having the argument or going back and saying that we need to be critiqued. Half of the people on this panel, I've edited for them. And why did I edit for them? Because I DM them and I saw, because I read their book or read their work even before we were working together. And I hit them up and I was like, hey, I saw this and this. Do you mind if I give you like my thoughts, right? And I think that that's a big thing when we're talking about this. We talk about this community, not just like the Black indie comics community, but we talk about the indie comics community and comics community in general. Again, we're comparing mass media, right? Which the big two are mass media to small press media at the largest, right? Like the comment itself said, like, why don't we critique them like we do the big two? It didn't say Boom. It didn't say Dynamite. It didn't say Dreamwave. It didn't say any of these, even Image, right? Like, it didn't go any of the ones that are slightly comparable, right? And these are still earning more than most of us, right? It didn't even say, why are we not comparing some of the small up and coming indies to Stranger Comics or Black Sands even, right? Because those are some of the largest Black platforms out there, indie Black platforms out there. Why are we not doing that? Or why are we not saying, why aren't we just holding them or keeping them at a standard, right? And some of this stuff should be done in private because like Duran said, who are you, right? The entire post itself sets itself up as an authority of this thing, whatever this critique is, right? So if Amani comes, right, again, Black Comics Universe, but people, again, that's known within the community, that's known within our structure of Black indie comics nationwide, right? That's not everybody's going to know it, but it's known, right? You're going to know that. So if he comes out and has done reviews because he's been doing reviews, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and the review is structured a certain way, it makes all the sense in the world. And if someone is new and trying to get like the Keith Lee effect in terms of doing reviews, I think it's important to remember that Keith Lee always has to go on and say, I'm not a critic. This is just my opinion. What the problem with this post is that post is saying that it's not opinion based. That post is purporting that it's fact. It's fact that it's not as good quality as the big two. You know how many font errors I've seen in the big two? You know how many printing errors I've seen in the big two? They have to put out a whole press release when they mess up and bring a whole thing back. It's really shitty when people say that, right? Because it's immediately starting us off at a disadvantage. It's starting us off saying we are less than, and why aren't we as good as? And I'm going to be the first one, and I say it in private, I say it in public, I say it wherever else. I will put myself as a writer, as an author, as a comic creator against anybody in the big two. I don't care. I've gone at it, not like gone at it, right? But a year or two back, Mark Wade said something to a friend of mine. He misinterpreted his post, and I've followed Mark Wade my entire life. I love Kingdom Come. And I had to be like, hey, Mark Wade, you're wrong. Like, you took this the wrong way. And he was a good enough man in his own regard he DM'd me. You know what I mean? Hey, I'm sorry, whoop, whoop, and he went back on the post and said his thing. So I don't think that there's any time that we should be putting ourselves behind other people, right? As a general group. I think, yeah, I've read my share of bad indie comics, not just Black ones, right? Because I got a ton. I've read my share of bad comics. But another thing about it is we have some of our compatriots here. No one's going around and saying Daniel Calban's American Dreams isn't as good as Superman, right? And that's a very quantitative thing that we can say because he's putting out comics in the exact same market we are. They're not going back and saying The Dancer isn't as good as Harley Quinn. These are comics in the wider indie comic community, right, that have the same standing and stature as we do, but somehow we have to be compared to the big two, the biggest comic book companies, the biggest corporations in the world. Like, you don't compare mom and pop to Walmart and Amazon, bro. Like, it doesn't happen. So it doesn't make sense that that's the bar that's kind of set. So that's what I'll say about my initial thoughts. Now I'm gonna
Go ahead.
I was just going to dovetail that into the next part, which I want everybody to touch on, and this one's a hot button. There was also, if people watched the follow-up YouTube video that Black Comic Lords did, it was like 2 to 3 hours long. It was very long. There was a part in it, and I think that this goes to the entire mindset of what was happening in the post originally. That's the subtext of the post. Harold ended up saying in that interview that when he writes things or when he reads and consumes this media, that he wishes the characters were just the characters and the story was just the story and they happen to be Black. That is a very, very naive way of thinking. Blackness and our Blackness, all of us, it's not happenstance, right? It's part of who we are. And because of the world we live in, that's forward facing. Now, how that forward facing Blackness presents itself is different for each one of us. But when we are going out, and don't get me wrong, as a younger man, as a 21-year-old, I said the same thing because we're in this world where we don't want to be judged as just a Black product, right? Which has a negative connotation when put that way. We want to be judged as a product with Black people. And that's a paradigm that we have to shift because being a Black product shouldn't have that downturn to it, right? And that's a societal problem. So I understand that. But the problem is when we're internalizing that in all of our critiques, in all of our criticisms, and all the things we're saying, that is a horrible standpoint because, again, we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage. We're saying already that we're less than, and hopefully they'll see us as human and then Black, as if the two are not the same, right? Like as the two aren't married, as if the only thing we have to do in this world isn't be Black and die. You know what I mean? Like, so I just, when you're coming at Black comics and saying that you wish that they were characters and then they were Black, you're already, where are you, bro? What, you know what I mean? Where are you? Because as I look around this room, I do fantasy. Danny does, action adventure comedy. Malachi does, fantasy, science fiction. We could go around all these, you know what I mean? Like, so what are you talking about? What do you like? And that kind of thing. You think that you deserve a platform to tell us we ain't shit, basically, because our characters aren't black by chance. Like, I'm not with the shits. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not with it.
I think, man, there's a, so of course, Brian, because you edit Ace Blade. So Ace Blade is a character that anybody can enjoy, yes, but there are certain things in Ace Blade that black people are gonna enjoy more because of this. Like, there's even early in the Ace Blade story, when he is confronted by the police, like, there are black people who are going to look at that situation differently than the general audience. Of course, the general audience can see, oh, he's in a dangerous position. There are 10 police officers here, and he is being seen as a criminal in this situation. So if he chooses to fight back, it could be dangerous. But the black people who are reading it are going to see this situation differently, right? Of course, we want the general audience to be able to grab hold of our characters and love them and feel for them, but there are things that are going to resonate with the black audience if you write it for black people. If you're a black person writing, there are certain experiences that you're going to have that attribute to your writing or the stuff that you make that are going to relate to your community. It's just going to happen. Hopefully it happens more, to be honest with you.
Well, that's what that's the beauty of our corner of the industry, is that we have those experiences and they haven't been widely explored by the mainstream, right? So that's a boon rather than something you want to take out of the narratives of that we write. Like, it's ridiculous to say, man, I just wish they happened to be black. We get a lot of stories about, Sam Wilson, who just happens to be black, and then he ends up saving everybody, but he don't show up in Harlem or wherever he's supposed to be from. And, or we get the extreme, the other extreme of that, where it's like, he's a pimp, like, cause he's black. He happens to be black. We got to make him a pimp because white folks are writing him. So it's such a ridiculous thing to say, I just wish my characters happen to be black, and then put them in situations that don't have anything to do with that. Come on, man. Like, that's why I get so pissed off about these kind of takes, because these ridiculous takes, like Brian is saying, they diminish us from the outset and make it seem like the experiences we have or the culture we're putting in the stories is something less than Captain America being frozen in the ice in World War II. And that's not the case at all. What comics needs, what media needs in general, people always say there's no new ideas. We're bringing that. That's what it needs. Every part of fiction, every piece of fiction, every genre, media, whatever we want to call it, of fiction always needs an infusion of new ideas, new writers and creators with new experiences to put into these hero arcs, these heroes' journeys. And if we don't do that, then we're not doing our job. So, it's ridiculous takes. I don't want to diminish the cat who wrote it, but at the same time, like, it's a bad faith take. It really is.
Oh, I want to jump in here. First, representing the review community cabal, as it seems to be seen as right now. Like, it does feel like a lot of folks with opinions are being vilified in this sense. And I'm not sure how constructive that is on the other side of this. I think it's very hard to have an opinion about someone, like Ronald, in this sense, like he's not here to kind of defend himself at his point. I don't think he was, I've actually had conversations with him, and I don't think he was his intent was malicious. You know what I'm saying? I think his intention was constructive. Now, how people take that, how we interpret that, that's a whole nother ball of wax. Just like
real quick, Imani, because that's important. Something you said though, intent
Yeah.
versus impact matters.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
if we're saying that his intent wasn't malicious, we also have to examine his impact, as well as
Mhm.
when he said what he said, there were no Black comic creators there to defend themselves. So just like he said, all this is up for debate.
Well,
All this is up
that's
for
not
debate.
not true. Like creators chimed in. There was like
Chimed in after
and
the
put
fact.
it.
He could do the, but he could do the same.
It
Is what I'm
was
saying. So it's not
that's true.
because
I'm
we're
what I'm
framing it
what I'm.
this. So we're framing this
Mhm.
as an attack at him not being able to defend himself. That's not the case. He defended
Mhm.
himself for the entire week, right? He's defended himself the entire time. So just as his opinion,
Okay.
right, of things is valid, right?
Mhm.
Forum. Nothing we're saying here, nothing I'm saying here is fact. And I said that. I said this is the way I feel, right? This is the way Jason feels. So this is not an attack on the person, and I want to make that declaration, right? This is
Mhm.
a battle of the ideology that was put forth,
Okay.
and that's
I
important.
think we had to make that clear but I think that's the type of nuance in the conversation that gets lost in this.
Well,
You know what
I
I'm saying?
just said
Because
I just said I'm not attacking the cat. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm attacking the comment. I'm attacking it, and that's great what Brian just said. It is an ideology. That bad faith take, starting where he's starting, is an ideology, and it's important to recognize that, because you can't get to the constructive critique part of it until you get over the idea, until you stop walking past the table, you know what I'm saying, figuratively first, right?
well, I want to speak to that directly because I think that's a very valid point because you also brought up Herschel's point that he brought up in Black Comic Lords. The very unique thing in like just like we talk about this whole conversation, like who you are and all this kind of stuff. I've been involved in this industry for 10, 15 years now. And what I've learned is that there's still pockets of this industry in terms of customers that I know for a fact that the Black indie community are missing. And what makes what Black Comic Lords is doing so unique is because they represent an audience that I know for a fact the Black indie community hadn't made a connection yet, because I've actually followed Black Comic Lords and actually seen that they're making the efforts they're making to introduce their followers to Black indies is new. By and large, the conversations they were having were about the big two, because most of what they discuss happens to be about historically Black comics, not just historically Black comics from the big two. We're talking about historically Black comics overall. So that community is very unique in the sense that they're collectors, and the demands that they are making on publishers across the board is very unique to them. And so when you have someone like Herschel make a statement like that, as much as I wouldn't necessarily like it for myself personally about, wishing that the characters happen to be Black rather than, be so focused on their Blackness, I can't necessarily dismiss that opinion out of hand, because Herschel represents a very, very not just large community, but even if they're a small community, they are a huge buying market. Like when you're hot in that community, it's like you they buy, and then they tell that, and when I know for a fact that when I referred indie creators to that group, and when they've latched on, like Tim Fielder can tell you, when I referred his book Infinitum to that group, they immediately grabbed onto it. And I did make a comparison, and as an example, I made a comparison in my review and in my critique of that book. I made a direct comparison with that book with Black Panther. I said, if you, and I knew it would strike a chord with them because the vast majority of those folks are Black Panther fans. And I said, if you are truly a Black Panther fan and the things that you were wishing that Black Panther would do, you will find in Infinitum. And that book sold extremely well in that group. I know for a fact. So,
hold on. Because there's a dichotomy you're talking about here, right?
Okay.
The dichotomy is we're talking about a group called Black Comic Lords, right?
Yes.
Not wanting you to lead as a creative with your character being Black, right? That makes no sense. Like that one, right? The next thing is just like you said, right? So if you post Infinitum in the group, why did they buy the book? Was your review up already? Was it already selling? Or did they buy it because it was a Black person in a Black group putting together a book that's about a Black character, right? You just said it's all the things that you wanted Black Panther to do, right? As another character. So this dichotomy of like, oh, it's okay to say we just wish the characters were dope and then Black, like that doesn't even jive with like the mission statement of Black Comic Lords. They're talking about
supposedly
Black comics, right, exactly. You're talking about historically Black comics from all of these different genres, right? We're talking about Black comics. Okay, and this is someone who has gotten posts denied from Black Comic Lords, right? My last and largest campaign was Air Force Ones. Did really, really good numbers, right? They didn't want it because they didn't consider it a comic. No big deal, no hate, right? We've all made money inside and outside of Black Comic Lords. But if we're saying that we need to structure what we do based on how the group or community that Black Comic Lords has fostered, that's again one of those non sequiturs. Why would that be the case, right? Why do we have to change in order to placate them, right? Not based on anything quantifiable. We're not saying the grammar was bad, right? We're not saying that they were not typos, but misspelled words, right? We're not saying any of that, right? This started off with a comparison of indie Black comics not being good enough, frankly, right? Like cut through all the bullshit. Indie Black comics not being good enough and not being comparable to the big two. And now we're going to split hairs and say, well, if we made our characters a little less Black and a little bit more palpable, then our Black audience will like them more. What is that even?
But that's a bridge all creators cross when they're trying to scale. I'm not saying like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everybody needs to just throw away whatever processes you have in creating comics in order to, placate folks. And Richard is right. BCL is not a monolith. They're not all the same. Richard's definitely one who doesn't agree. I know that for a fact. But yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying that no one needs to compromise, their ethics or the way their approach to anything. I'm just saying my main point is that when this community, I've learned myself personally, is that when I pay attention to their opinions. I don't have to like it. I don't have to follow it, but understanding who that community is, and they're buying power, let alone they're buying habits. Yeah, I'd be a fool not to at least give it some credence. I'm not saying that we just got to take everything for face value. I'm saying that we should be paying attention though. Like, and I've seen indie folks, make mistakes and they put them up on game, and then they turn around and fix things because this audience matters. It's like their opinion matters. It's like you just can't.
I'm gonna ask who, right? Because we always get that, and I've seen it personally.
Perfect. It's like I'm gonna tell you straight up. Hold
on real quick. I'm not trying to call you out. There is a thing that happens at Black Comic Lords from a couple specific people, and me and those people have gone back and forth, so some of them know, right? But it always becomes Black people do this, or Black creators do this, or Black comics are always about the angry white man, but it's always this phantom of like, who? Name them, right? Why are we not in these instances? Who are we talking
about? This is a perfect example. All right. So people were talking about the antagonist book, Tyler Martin, right? Godhood Comics. And they liked what they saw. They were interested in the book. A few members bought the book. Okay. Now, in a positive critique and a positive review from members of that group goes a long way. So it's important. So there was no way Tyler could know that a first impression, making a good first impression with this person, with this buyer, would have helped. But I think it was Richard. Richard got the book. Okay. And it wasn't in a Gemini mailer. Okay. It wasn't backed aborted. It came in an envelope, right? It was bent up, and he showed the book. I remember we just had a talk about this. It was all bent up, it was out of shape, and all that kind of stuff. And I know for a fact that for folks like Tyler and the creators that I actually do business with, it's like that for them. It's just it's petty, but for that community, as far as collectors, that's a big deal. And so he wasn't just missing out on one sale with that mistake. He was missing out on potentially thousands of dollars in sales just for that one thing. And it was easy to fix. So once like Tyler, he turned around and changed his process in terms of just that one thing as far as mailing out his books. But that's an issue. That's not just with black, that's not just with black comics. That's with across the board. Like when folks buy things from eBay, and it comes. Or it was one of them books. But either way.
So are cats and black comics lords, when they catch their bent up comics that is mostly attributed to USPS or whoever we're sending them to, is it possible? Did somebody even say I'm assuming that was a thread, how about we contact Tyler and see? Because I'm going to say for 133 Art, I don't do Gemini mailers. I haven't done it. I haven't had a chance to really research the cost versus what I've already been doing because we just running fast. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that's the cost of doing business. You got to take time out. You got to figure it out. If you're doing something that works, you don't get a lot of complaints, you run with it. So I haven't done Gemini mailers, but he was. Oh, okay. Because somebody needs to contact the publisher. Because anytime somebody has an issue with a 133R book and they just hit me up and say, "Yo, Jay, look what the post office did," or "Yo, Jay, how this got to me like this," then I literally send them a new book and we done. And that goes into what Duran was saying in his earliest comments. We don't give black businesses the credence that you're talking about for us to give to the lords. How about they throw some credence over these ways so that we can all kind of create this ecosystem of black comics together, right? That's important as well. We don't just jump on.
It wasn't just about jumping on him. It was about the fact that he didn't even realize that was an issue.
He wouldn't know. How would he know unless somebody contacted him so he can do the customer service?
That's where I came in. Mm-hmm. It's like I was having a conversation with these folks in real time. My issue is, why is it even a thread about me getting broke up bad comics going out to supposedly thousands of people where it could affect his sales, when I, as the consumer, could just holler at my man and see. Now, if the customer service is fucked up, then roast him. But if I get a bad comic from Danny, I'm going to hit up Danny. If I get a bad comic from Mal or Brian, I'm going to hit them up. Or let's take I know them. Let's take that out of it. If I get a bad comic from Amazon, I'm going to hit up Amazon and say, what's the deal? I want my money back or something. Why, when it's a black business, then it's like I got to do a post about it? Because you know why? Because there's already
there's already that wall of black businesses is less than. And
That's about
I'm not
that's
trying to
business
burn.
across the board though. That's
Hey,
business across the board. Like, and
but
even
we
you
supposed
said
to
it.
be
If I get-
we supposed to be black comic lords though. I
No,
personally,
no.
and whether this is whether this works in business or not, I expect my folk to come at me differently. Now, if that's bad, fine, I accept it. I take the hit. But we supposed to be black comic lords. That's all I'm saying, and that's a
also,
problem to me.
How
For
many-
me,
Look, how many? Because there's a sense of grandeur here that I'm not understanding, right? How many more comics did Tyler's Antagonist that sold 24K on Kickstarter off the rip? How many more comics did he sell because he put Gemini mailers in there? You know what I'm saying? Like, how many people were like, oh, I didn't buy this comic before, but now that he did Gemini mailers, I'm buying this comic. I don't think that was the thing. I think that
No, it was.
if he sold more,
It was, because he's like,
no one would
I
bought
was-
a comic
I was
because of the
there.
Gemini mailer, bro.
Listen, understand. Look,
It doesn't make
understand.
sense.
It makes perfect sense in the sense that they saw in real time him make a genuine effort to fix a problem.
Okay, so again,
So that did affect
no.
sales.
So
just like
exactly, no.
hold on, let me finish.
So
let me
fixing
finish.
the problem.
Let me finish.
Fixing
Like,
the
it wasn't
problem.
just,
You didn't let me
not
finish.
just that.
So fixing the problem, right? That was a perceived problem, generated sales, right? And this is how algorithms work. This is how social media works, right? We present a problem that gets 300 comments, right? More than, hey, I'm selling my book. I'm selling my book, gets 7 comments and 14 likes from all your friends and nothing else. But if you say this book sucks because they gave it to me badly, you get 300, 500, 800 comments, right? So now you have visibility. So now you, as the seller, as the entrepreneur, go back and say, hey, you know what? Y'all are right. I'm going to fix this problem. So now all 800 people that commented 800 times on this thread just saw you fix a problem. That's visibility. No one buys a comic purely because a Gemini mailer was there. Like, that is not what sells a comic. The cover sells a comic. The content sells a comic. The person sells a comic. The advertising sells a comic. The social media algorithm sells a comic, not the Gemini mailer. That's a sense of, again, there's a sense of grandeur there, saying that, like, because he changed the packaging, not even the external packaging, the internal packaging on his product, he sold more units in this group. No, he sold more units in that group because more eyes got on it. That's what does sales. There's not, I can't explain how many action figures I have in my house. Not one time have I looked at a Todd McFarlane figure and been like, man, this internal packaging, shit, that's why, man, let me get that next Gothic Spawn because this internal packaging is like, that's not what happens. What happens is we see the thing, we're exposed to the thing. Todd McFarlane comes out, he does his little video, and he says, look at Spawn's cape, and I go, oh shit, like the other 10,000 people that just saw it.
agreed.
Duran, you quiet? Mike, you quiet? Malachi?
All right, I'll hop in. I appreciate you, brothers. I really do. Thank you for having me out. For once, I'm not the person that's pushing and tugging, and it feels pretty cool to be a bystander because I always want to smoke with everybody. I don't know. First thing I want to say is, like, shout out to the Black Comic Lords. They do everything that they can to highlight, to encourage, to support. And those guys are my big brothers for real. But I will say one thing. I've seen the evolutions. Black Comic Lords started in my group, on the record. Blurred Core, they grew. They wanted something specifically for comics that grew. And I've seen the evolution of their message. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Because it's everything that I wish my group was. Because I started Blurred Core for comics, and then it kind of grew into like anime and all of these other things. And I'm just really just a comic book guy. But I can appreciate the other things. And so they have a piece of the corona that I wish I, would foster a little bit more. But when it comes to actually collecting comics, like beyond indie, I'm If people know about comic collectors, if my name don't come up, we talking big comics. Um, I'm one of the names that should come up, and so like the quality of a comic matters 120%. But for me, especially when it comes to indie, like I struggle with the idea that people should be black by happenstance. Like, I don't want to read a black comic book unless it is immersed in culture. My favorite Marvel comic of all time is David Walker's Nighthawk because I identify with the blackness in that comic book so much. I don't like Sam Wilson. I go on record to talk about him because he's black adjacent, even. Like, and when it comes to business, because again, I'm not a creator, like my gym is black as fuck. I don't try I don't play top 40 music in my gym. When I market my gym, I market it to black people intentionally and specifically. And I've been making a shit ton of money for a very long time because of that. And I know that the gym industry is very different than the comic industry. But here's some of the ideas that my mentors threw out at me. The fitness industry is a billion-dollar industry. Black people don't necessarily appreciate fitness like white people, and they will not spend the same type of money. Does that sound something like comics to you guys? Kind of does.
That sounds
Black
like every business, Teron. Like
Right,
nearly
right.
every
So,
business.
and I hear the same tone in comics that I see in the fitness industry. And so I looked at that as a challenge. You know what I mean? I looked at it as a challenge and I said, you know what? When people come into my gym, it's going to be trap music. When people come into my room, when people come to my gym, there's going to be black superheroes all over there. I do not allow white superheroes in my gym. It's not going to happen. When white people come into my gym, they're like, oh shit, this is something I've never experienced before because I'm not placating to anybody but black folks. Like it's important for my visibility. I need to be comfortable in my space. I need to be uncomfortable around the people that I'm not creating for nobody else. I'm creating for me and my people. And what do we know about black folks? Biggest consumers on the planet by far. Why the fuck are you placating to or generalizing your marketing strategies when you know that your people spend more money than anybody else? It's a fact. It's an actual fact. Regardless of the industry, whether it's the book industry, whether it's the fitness industry, whether it's the fashion industry, we spend more money than anybody on the planet. Hard cash too, not credit or anything like that. We spending hard cash. And black folks got the nerve to say, why are my characters not happen to be black? I'm not buying your book, bro. I refuse to buy that book because for me, it's cooning. Let's just call it what it is. It's cooning. I don't even want them type of people around me. When I was selecting people for my convention, I was vetting them. You had to be a certain type of black person to sell books at my convention. And so for anybody who wants to come on in 2025, you got to be on board with it. I don't like none of that. I don't like black adjacency. I don't like, no. Like, at what point are we going to prioritize us? We never get the opportunity to do it. And then you got the nerve to have other black people saying, well, maybe they need to not be so black. Bro, get out of my space. I don't want you here. And the funny thing about it, I had tons of white people at my convention. Tons. Because I won't dick ride in white people. I refuse to do that. What is wrong with black folks? Stop doing that. I can't stand it. And so I have bad relationships with a lot of black people because I'm outwardly black and it makes them uncomfortable. It's weird to me. I'm not buying your book if it don't remind me of some black shit. I'm not spending no money at your store if it don't remind me of some black shit. Because I can get it anywhere else. There's way more white people on this in America than there are black people. So when I go to your store, when I buy your comic, I need it to remind me of something that I'm familiar with. because I don't get it everywhere else. That's why my convention materialized. Do y'all know that 5 other Black folks tried to start a convention in America? Only one materialized last year. It was mine. Because I won't trying to act like, yeah, we need to be all included and have a bunch of different people. Like, no, bro. When I'm sitting and I'm vending for hours in all of these areas, I'm literally handpicking Black people. Yo, I'm having a convention as far as by us, show up. I did that for 6 straight months, every weekend, intentionally Black. And y'all want happenstance. I don't want these people at my convention. I don't want these white, light Black people at my convention. I don't want these dark white people at my convention. Go somewhere else. Because there's a million conventions that cater to those folks. So be Black on purpose all the time. Make everybody uncomfortable because people are scared to be Black in public. It's weird. You wear it. You can't get away from it. I just really struggle. I really struggle. I really, really, really struggle. I had white people at my convention saying, oh my God, what can I do to contribute to next year? White people. In the same token, I have Black people saying that, man, maybe you need to scale back. Maybe, maybe you need to diversify your vendor list. Like, bro, hell no. If I don't have no white people as vendors at my convention, I'm okay with that.
I'm coming in on because I fully agree with you, Duran. Fully agree, as always. Love the viewpoints, of course. For example, there are no white people in my books at all, and there never will be. I'm pretty upfront on that. But it's a really good point about being just, authentically yourself and making a good product. I'm sure all of us, especially those of us who have products, know that white people will get your product if they're just interested, right? Like, if it's interesting. I had at Duran's place, there were a couple of white people, a couple of them LGBTQ white people, but that is a different tangent, which I appeal to, which not everyone necessarily can appeal to. Definitely bought the book. We're excited for it. We're down for it. Like, and they get genuinely invested because they're like, this is amazing. This is cool. I want to support. This is fascinating because you have an interesting product. And some of them, yes, are kind of deep in the cut of like loving Blackness and not always the best way. Let's be real. Like, not always necessarily the best way, whether it's a fetishization or something like that. But there are people who genuinely are like, hey, this is great. I would never know about this if I didn't go here. Plus, as someone who's gone to conventions that are, white, I guess I wouldn't even say white, but more like general public conventions versus Black specific conventions, there's a gigantic difference of how well I do, who it appeals to, who buys it, and who comes over. Like, there might not be anybody. Sometimes I'll never forget, like, going to Baltimore Comic-Con and the difference of people there, even Black people, like, passing right by, versus at a convention. Also give a shout out to Black Comics Day in San Diego. Malachi put me on too. I always thank him for that. But like, Black people would come up, yes, of course. Like, they're like, hey, I'm here. It's a Black convention. I want to go there. But then you get, like, white people coming up and be like, wow, this is just fascinating stuff. Like, this is interesting art. Like, hey, I want to check it out. And they're not people trying to be like, hey, I'm trying to like get in on Black people's money. It's more like, this interests me, period. And I think being authentic to that, and that goes even hand in hand with the original conversation about, critiquing levels and the differences that people come at. Like, we definitely shouldn't necessarily diminish our ideas and concepts for us. Like, good products are going to work no matter what. And our mindset being Black, I think, is a benefit rather than a negative, of course, because there's authentic concepts that we know. For example, me, every lady, as I have predominantly woman characters, has a different Black hairstyle. It's a very important thing that, like, if you look at the covers, none of the women have the same hairstyle. And that's like something that, like, I know from like the variety of Black women who I know in person, but just also understanding the importance of Black hair, as I have none as nowadays. But that's just important ideas that come in with your mind and someone else that vibes with them, right? Like, to a Black person who really understands that that appeals to them. And I think it's totally okay to like not diminish us with certain critiques versus holding us to a good standard as well, because as I said several times in my piece here, that good products are going to work, period. And people are, and even white people are going to come and get your products because they're just genuinely fascinated. If they're not racist, of course, that is a whole different thing. But yeah, so I think it is important that we don't overly reduce ourselves. And I agree with Duran. Sometimes I've seen that directly from Black people coming to my books and wondering like about the diversity and being upset when there weren't white people in it. And I'm looking at them as another Black person like, why is that a bad thing for you? Like, what is that? So, yeah.
So my thing is like, I get the general tone. Like I'm just meeting Mike and Duran in sort of person for the first time here, but I get the general idea that everybody on here don't give a shit about critiques in the sense of like it's gonna crush our souls or destroy our products or destroy our businesses if somebody gives us a critique, right? Like that's not a real thing. So again, we're starting out bad. I don't care about critiques. Man, I came up art-wise in some of the hardest critiques ever. My mentor will critique the shit out of me. Like, he will destroy your soul, right? So it's not, critiques don't bother me, especially with my work at all. Especially, I consider myself a newer writer. And if somebody critiques my writing, okay, fine. There are things you don't jive with. And my fear about the critiques as far as the internet and this internet culture goes is that for Black folks, it will be overwhelmingly negative. And that could be a problem. But okay, let's take that out of it. Other than that, nobody cares if you're critiquing our books, especially if you're giving the books, you're highlighting the books to thousands of people. That's fine. My issue comes in with, again, starting out bad from the jump. Like, there's no reason before customer service happens that we need to be critiquing a book that was mailed to one person. I just don't see it. I just don't get it. I just don't like it. But, okay, talking about the idea that our books need to be critiqued to make us better, as if that doesn't happen. As if we're not agonizing over these IPs 24/7 as Black business owners, as Black business owners do for things that are not comics as well. Daron has several businesses. I have a couple businesses. I agonize over the quality, the structure, how I'm pulling in money to make my ends meet. So the assumption that Black businesses aren't doing that is a problem for me. It's annoying to me. I do not like it. I see it as propaganda. And I think in order for us to jibe with that particular idea, we need to espouse that quickly. Like, that needs to go, right? We all run Black businesses and we're all doing the work and learning what we need to learn to keep them going. Back in the day, one of my favorite things about bringing it back to comics, one of my favorite things about comics is where you can get a set of creators that start from A and then they go all the way to Z, and they're not as good as they were starting from A. Invincible wasn't the book it was from issue 1 to issue, 78, something like that. Invincible is one of my favorite comics of all time. And it starts with Cory Walker and it ends with Ryan Ottley. And Cory Walker, and both Cory Walker and Ryan Ottley start at different places. Robert Kirkman starts at a different place. He becomes a really good writer through the span of the series. And it's a no-brainer for comic fans to let that book run. Walking Dead, same thing. I mean, technically, we do start with Tony Moore and end with I forget my guy's name. The second guy, almost fully formed. I love his artwork. He's great. Whatever. The point is, you start at point A, you end at point Z, and again, the wider comic audience has no qualms letting that run and letting that become whatever it can. But when it comes to a black comic, for some reason, we got to be fully formed at the jump. You got to be at point Z. Otherwise, I'm gonna critique it. And if you have a problem with that, if you have a problem letting me grow, or me not letting you grow, then you don't understand critiques and how to do business, and you're not doing it right, and like that. I don't like the idea of that. So I'm here to push back and dispel that shit. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous.
Mal, you wanted to say something, right?
Yes. First off, I agree with what everybody has said. And it's actually reassuring that I don't exist in a vacuum. I'm not in a echo chamber. Well, I'm in an echo chamber, but it's one that actually works, right? So for me, and it's something I've been telling myself all year, my best is enough. When it comes to me doing my day job, when it comes to me logging off and I'm working on outlining the next her novel or showing, Brian the latest her script, it's with the hope that it's being reviewed. Now, if you know Brian, again, many of us do, Brian will tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. There have been times when I wanted to rip out the tiniest shred of hair that he may have, because he's been that hard on me regarding books. But then I can't get mad because this is pushing us to, produce the best product. So critiques are necessary. I get that, and I always welcome that. But I also want people to also give us some grace, right? When I first started writing the Her series almost 10 years ago, this is before I even thought about doing comic books. It was just me by myself. And I had to do a lot of research. And if you've been inside a Barnes and Noble store and you go to their sci-fi and fantasy section, all the covers were some white woman, out in space being chased by aliens or whatever, but it was never us. It was never somebody up until very recently. And I also found out that out of all the sci-fi and fantasy authors, there's only 5% that are black. So we need to be heard, we need to be seen, we need to be visible. And I'm not comfortable with us getting that visibility if it's fully negative, right? Um, you don't have the right to shit on my book. You don't have the right to be disrespectful when all I need is a way for someone to, hey, Malachi, do this differently. A suggestion, you don't have to do it. Um, we tell our stories from a authentic place, right? These are stories that have been brewing in our heads for a long time. Sometimes these are stories that are passed on to us, and now we're in a position that we have a platform to share it. People need to understand that. They need to understand that, this is still a work in progress. And just give us the same grace that you give Marvel, that you give DC, because I know a lot of people weren't happy with their what was that the storyline they did, Death Metal with DC recently or whatever. People were trashing that, but they still read it because it was still very popular. Brian, you may remember, I think it was 2 years ago when Jason Aaron did Heroes Reborn and had Doctor Doom as Juggernaut. Like y'all still read that, so just that was. I still think about that. So yes,
Egghead Doom,
huh?
that Egghead Doom.
Yes, it was so bad. So, like Jason was saying, allow us time to get into this, to the rhythm of the storytelling. Let us fully, explain the hero's journey. A lot of the people who are critiquing us don't even know what that is, but we do. But that's my hot take.
I think another aspect that kind of gets to me is that when we talk about critiques, I don't think we're taking mass media into account. And I don't know how many things people have read, right? Stephanie Meyer, one of the biggest books in the last, 2 decades or whatever. You got the Twilight series. That book sucked. It's like it's poor. It's poorly written. It's bad. Like objectively, even not. I'm not just saying that because I didn't like the story. Objectively, it's a poorly written book. The same for the Hunger Games. Objectively, again, I had to read it. At the end of the first Hunger Games book, they have mutant werewolves with human eyes. Like what? See, look at Jason's face. Right. Again, these are things that we are not necessarily given, and I'm not trying to have, again, mutant werewolves with human eyes or whatever, but there's an aspect to it to say that we need to be critiqued in order to be better. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think that we need to be supported in order to be better. Because there are many ways to do things. A critique.
I will say, not to interrupt you super hard, but I will say another point about critiquing us as hard as we critique Marvel and DC is if we had the marketing budgets, if people supported our books and then we were able to have the marketing budgets as big as Marvel and DC, then we would be able to step over the critiques and create our own Juggernaut Dooms that people still buy regardless of quality. And then, I'll let y'all critique me however y'all want.
Right. There's also the aspect of, I feel like we don't give credence to how many Marvel, DC, again, Boom, and everybody else, how many of their comics get canceled because they also suck, right? They get canceled all the time. The people in the indie comics community that are doing indie comics to make money or make it big, they're easy to find because they do it for about 2 years, 3, 5 tops, and they're out the game, right? Because it's not a money-making endeavor like that. These are people doing it for passion and for love. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be doing it with quality and those concerns involved. But just because you have an opinion doesn't mean that your opinion holds weight or has the credence to go up against someone else's creativity. And I think that that's some of the duality of the argument, right? Because you have a person that's putting out something creative, you are judging that creative thing. And when you give those judgments, good or bad, you're placing yourself in a position to judge, right? So that assumes a position of power or authority to say that this is what should be changed, this is what's wrong, this is what's not right, this is what you should do differently. And I think in our social media age, as opposed to someone coming from a fan standpoint of saying, hey, again, how many Star Wars fan fictions were there before they started the expanded universe and on and on and on, right? Where people were like, this would be cool if we did, or if, Star Wars did this or that. But we have this media age now where a movie comes out and the first thing you see from somebody's comment is, we didn't ask for that. We don't need that. You didn't ask for any of it, right? We didn't need any of it. That's someone who wanted to put that out, again, for money making, for creativity, for whatever it might be. They're putting it out for their reasons. But it's not a necessity to the critic's life, to the observer's life. It's not necessary. So just like that media that they're going to consume is not necessary, that opinion is not inversely necessary to the creator. Now, that is not to say that we don't get critiques and we don't get things that help us move forward and grow, but it is to say that those critiques are not immediately quantifiable. They are not the immediate word. Just because you didn't like something or you didn't feel it, again, it's so easy to turn the page, right? It's so easy to keep scrolling. It's so easy to not continue to support the product if you don't like it. That, again, just because you don't like it and you want something to change, that creator shouldn't change. Maybe that's what they want to do. I have numerous emails from the first Justice issue, which was a mistake. We did the first Justice issue, and at the end of the issue, the vampires come and attack Justice, and all of them are white. That's because my artist was Filipino, and he didn't understand that I wanted a bunch of different colors, even though I said it, right? All of them are white. But when we got the print and it went to print, I was like, run it. And I had a lot of people come out and say what they had to say about it. The difference being, when Hydra is all white, no one bats an eye, right? When Arnold Schwarzenegger is the one white man taking out an entire South American country of supposed drug dealers and mercenaries, nobody bats an eye. But if you got a black man doing that, right? And again, let's go on demographics. The likelihood of vampires in America being white is super high. We only 13% of the population, right? and everybody else is lower than us. So that means 87% of the vampires you're gonna see is gonna be white folks, right, or more. So again, it seems to reason that things should happen. So again, I say all that to say that there are reasons that some of these story mechanics happen the way they do. There are reasons that sometimes they don't, and there are going to be mistakes, and there are going to be a problem. But painting the entire Black comic community or the indie comics community with that large brush of saying that we need to change and we need to be able to be criticized and we need to, that is just a horrible bad faith way to start the conversation with these creators, right? To start with these people, to start with anybody in any group, regardless again of the intention, because the impact of that is so vast because of how it's set up. So again, I don't have any personal ire against the creator. I mean, against the original poster. I don't know him, right? But I'm always going to attack that idea, and I'm always going to attack that ideology because at the end of the day, we are enough. We are good enough. Whatever we do. And again, this is saying that as someone who has edited for, at this point, hundreds of indie comics, literally hundreds of indie comics in 5 years, hundreds of indie comics, hundreds of books, right? For all these different people. And I've had enough people, like Malachi said, I have no problem telling somebody their book sucks. Like, it don't make no, I will immediately be like, that don't make no sense, whatever it is, right? But that is behind closed doors. That is in order to make someone better. And hey, this is, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to get to? As opposed to sort of lambasting an entire community. Because again, we're not lambasting, even in that original post, you're not lambasting Marvel for all the mistakes that they've made. We're not lambasting X-Men 97 for all the mistakes, even though it's a great cartoon, right? For all the mistakes that were at X-Men 97. We're not lambasting DC for all the mistakes, because we're always going to give DC, even though the DC EU movies suck, we're still going to be like, well, DC is great. I'm one of the ones. So I think that there needs to be some wherewithal with how we use our words and how we do these things and the place that we are critiquing or criticizing from.
I don't even care about public critique. Public critique us the live long day. Again, ain't nobody scared of that. The issue is I want to make sure that people are critiquing the merit of the work and not because I have the audacity to be a black creator inserting culture into my books. Right? Like, that is a bad take. That's bad faith. That's disingenuous. And you cannot critique all of these 100 imprints, indie imprints, on the same merits you would critique a damn Carnage book. Again, Marvel's been producing comics for 100 years. They have crazy marketing budgets. They have 20 people in the marketing office that are pushing these books. We do not have that. So while it's great to act like we're all on this level playing field or this post-racial world or whatever this mindset comes from, that is not the case. So I'm going to always push back on that when somebody says, well, black creators should be able to blip, blip, blip. No. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. And yes, you should buy books because they black, because they got black people on them. Absolutely you should. You absolutely should. If you about collective economics or you about black people doing things and making things happen, if you about this building generational wealth, then yes, you should buy it because they got a black person on the cover. It's ridiculous not to do that, especially how cheap these damn things is. We don't even sell them for that much. Like, what the hell? Anyway.
We got some last thoughts, because your boy got to go to work in just a little bit, and I apologize. I've been running a little long, but I want this to be the first of many that we do moving into the future.
Since seem like I'm the bad guy in this room here, I just want to say 2 or 3 things. Speaking to the question of whether or not you can hold indie comics to the same standard we hold Marvel and DC. Honestly, yes, you can. And I'm going to say why. Because if you're a fan of storytelling, then I can appreciate storytelling from an indie standpoint, and I can use that exact same benchmark when I'm reading Marvel and DC. And if I'm critical of how Marvel and DC mishandles their storytelling, then I can surely have a discussion about an indie book that's mishandling theirs. So on that level alone, in terms of storytelling, in terms of the medium of comics, even, it just so happens that I've been having a conversation with other folks that critique comics. You know what I'm saying? And we're having this conversation. I shared with them, I said, what is your benchmark? And I shared with them my benchmark. My benchmark is a 20-page indie comic that I'm sure like nobody in this room may even heard of. But that's the standard, and it's a Black creator. And I hold Marvel and DC and everybody underneath them to that standard.
What's the book?
So the book is called The Box We Sit On by Richie Pope. It's a 20-page comic. It's a one-shot. It's not all that complicated. It's really a very simple, elegant story. I hold Marvel to that story. I hold you put anything across if I'm reviewing anything or critiquing anything, that's the standard I'm holding to. And there's not a lot of bells and whistles. It's not a superhero comic. None of that stuff. It's just amazing. It's amazing book. So and that's by and large the approach that all of us are coming from. So if we're critiquing a Black indie book, if I'm critiquing, I had an opinion about the last Storm book that came out, but I'm holding everybody to a standard. You know what I'm saying? It just so happens y'all talking about how the Black comic lords have an opinion. They wouldn't even speak dude's name who wrote the last major Black Panther run. So in terms of grace, it's like literally that dude was Voldemort. So it's hard as far as holding people to standards, whether it's from the big two or whatever, wherever they're coming from, And at the same time, I mean, you can feel however you want to about this audience in terms of Black comic lords or any other audience and their opinions and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, these are consumers, and you're going to have to build a relationship or of trust or something with them one way or another. Does that mean you're going to have to compromise some things? It may be. If you're really looking to scale this thing, and I know for a fact that every single one of these Black indie publishers is trying to scale. Just like none of you all are hitting the demand. I know that for a fact. I just know that for a fact. And it's like, as much as I love every single one of y'all just not hitting it. I know that the demand is huge. It's like we're coming from a Black superhero movie that generated billions of dollars. We have thousands of Black indie publishers out right now, and nobody's hitting that mark. So it's like, I know, so the gap between the Black indies across the board and where the demand is a huge chasm.
Elaborate on the demand. What's the demand? What's the criteria for the demand?
As soon as that's what's so frustrating, because as soon as we start kind of having a conversation about the criterion for the demand, that's when we start butting heads. I just shared one with you. I shared two with you. It's like it didn't seem like a small petty thing. It's like what Herschel's saying. You can have an issue with that all day long, but at the end of the day, that's on the list. So it's like whether or not you compromise and cross that bridge and want to meet that consumer where he's at.
Wait, refresh everybody. What are the two things?
I mentioned the fact that we talked about Herschel when he was saying that he would like Black. He wants them to be Black, but not just happen to be Black. At least, but I'm not going to speak for him, because at the same time there might have been some nuance to that. But at the same time, all I'm saying is I'm saying that his opinion should matter as a consumer, whether or not we want to, deal with that how we like. We might hate it, and we're free to do that too. But just understand, he doesn't represent. He represents a very huge community that every single body in this room is trying to reach this audience. And if
So
you
that
like,
could-
and if it's like, and if you're gonna push back, because see, here's the thing: if you're gonna push back on something as small as Gemini mailers, then yeah, that's like there's no point in having this conversation. But to be fair, but just to be clear,
Gemini Mailer is a brand.
just to be clear,
It's a brand.
just,
but I
that's
don't
just
care
a-
about I don't care about Gemini Mailers as a thing. It's a brand.
That's fine.
It's just
That's
something.
fine.
It's just I'm pushing back on not the Gemini mailers in and of themselves. There could be a point where I use Gemini mailers. I haven't done the research on that, is what I'm saying. I'm pushing back on the idea that there needs to be a post that you got a comic with a bend in it. That's dumb. Anyway, what I'm saying is the criteria.
It's not dumb.
It's not dumb for collectors. I get it. I'm reading the comments here.
But that's the
shout out
that's
to
the thing.
collectors.
It's like,
that's great.
but if you
listen to what I'm getting at. Me and you we're not even talking about that. We're not talking about my ideas versus of your ideas versus Gemini versus mine. What I'm saying is you're saying the criteria to meet this however members in Black Comic Lords is one, our characters should happen to be Black rather than be culturally Black, and two, the packaging that is sent in making, or rather, I'm gonna give them even more grace. The comics need to get to them in the kind of packaging that won't harm their collectability. Those are the two criteria that we're talking about right here to get Black Comic Lords group to buy our stuff. That's all I want clarity on.
And that's it. But that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making.
I know. I was
if you
just
want-
asking
if-
for clarity on what you were
If you
on
want
that point of view.
every single the Black indie publishers in this community are all looking to scale. They're looking to build their communities, and most of them trying to figure out how to get it to scale. And I know for a fact that in order to get them to scale, they're going to have to make some compromises. They're going to have some conversations with consumers, and they're going to have to meet some folks where they're at, as opposed to trying to convince them to come to them. And it's going to be a back and forth. It's going to be a genuine conversation. But at the end of the day, it's not just going to be. It's like y'all can go as long as y'all want to on my way or the highway. It's like y'all can go.
Well, let me stop.
But
Don't make that assumption that we're doing that by asking questions. That's not what. That's not what.
I'm making that assumption based off the fact that y'all are getting defensive over something that
I don't feel like I'm
making
defensive. I'm just asking. Just asking questions. I'm not being defensive. I'm asking questions and asking for clarity.
My second point is this. My second point is this. My second point is this: is that I want to shout out to the people that I've actually reviewed on my website, and I want to shout them out because I want to shout out Mike Watson. I want to shout out Victor Dandridge. I want to shout out Nigel. I want to shout out some of that stuff is not unsolicited, but I want to shout them out specifically because the reason why they came to me is because they weren't afraid of the critique.
What did you just say?
And it's not because
hold on. No. What did you just say? The reason that
they were not afraid of
the reason
they came
to me,
yes,
right, was because they weren't afraid. That's completely different than someone giving an unsolicited opinion and basically telling you have to listen to it.
Let me finish my statement. Let me finish my statement. My statement was going to be.
I'm defending you, bro. I'm defending you. Wait.
That's not. But that's not the statement I'm making. My statement I'm making is that they sent it. They sent it to me because. Yes, they sent it to me because they were not afraid of the critique because they wanted to be held to the same standard as a major big two. They wanted to because it's like
by whom?
They wanted
by whom? By you, correct? By you,
yes.
The man who was over Black Comics Universe, the man who has stake in the game, the man who has credentials, the man who has been in the trenches, like you said, for 10 to 15 years. That changes the dynamic of what you're talking about. That makes you an honest critique and an honest person that can give that, right? Not someone who's just coming and saying, hey, you got to listen to me because I said it. Your word holds more weight than other people's word, and that makes a difference. Also, the fact that they came to you to say, hey, I trust you and what you're going to say because you are that guy, right? What we are talking about initially here, right, is someone posting, and again, this is not specifically to the poster. I'm not going after the person. What I'm going after is the thought process behind the post, how it can be perceived. This is someone saying, I'm that guy, so I'm going to tell y'all what y'all doing wrong, right? As opposed to me coming to say, hey, Amani, I think that you could help me get better. There's a big difference there.
I don't think Cat is saying that I'm that guy per se. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
what I'm thinking is, what he's saying though is that overall everybody should judge this way by this thing, and that's not right. That's bad faith.
I'm not saying, okay, I'm not saying that this particular, I don't want that last comment to be on that particular post. I'm not saying that Harold is saying that word. What I am trying to do is show the difference in what Amani has done for Mike Watson and Victor Dandridge and all people that we respect and know, right? And what they contributed to that process as well. They contributed to that process by going to Amani and saying, hey, we want you to do this, as opposed to someone saying, hey, you should do this unsolicited. There's a huge, there's a fucking ocean of difference there. And that's what I'm trying to say.
And suggesting that the whole community should judge on those particular criteria as well is folly, is what I'm saying. Adding on to that.
You mind if I butt in, please? Pretty please.
Yeah.
All right. So Imani, I want to be very upfront with you. I appreciate you, brother. What you contribute to the culture, it matters. Let's go on record to say, specifically for me, I don't want to bomb on you. I don't want you to feel like we're bombing on you. I know a lot of times that when we have these very sensitive conversations, people butt heads and stuff like this. So I just want to let you just some reassurance, as we exit this thing, that you're good with me, and I'm speaking on behalf of everybody here, that you always going to be good with the community and everybody within it, because this is very constructive, and the conversation needs to be had. And like I said, you're valuable, and I want you to continue to do what you're doing on behalf of the culture, because we all need each other. You're a pillar, and continue to provide your critiques and things like that, because like I said, it's wildly important. And I can tell you're passionate. You wouldn't be here right now if you weren't passionate about it. And we've never really had any interactions beyond just this point. And I appreciate you. I just want you to, at least have that as we tie up things. As far as how the whole direction of this conversation, it's the same thing. I just really struggle. For me, especially when I'm trying to be objective and trying to help, what's the best solution? What can we do to really, what I'm saying? And then he says trigger warning in the very beginning. So he knows that there's a possibility that he can rub people the wrong way. Maybe you shouldn't. Literally, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't. And so while I'm being very direct about the brother, because I'm not going to act like it's not personal, because I saw his commentary up and down in that thread. There were very direct and personal things, and I'm not going to act like he meant well and stuff like that, because we had exchanges and he was generalizing people. He was 120%. That's what he was doing. So I'm not going to act like he was in good faith or he meant well, because he didn't. I had specific conversations with him about him. And so I think it was terrible. It was a terrible take. And when he went on live afterwards, his energy was very different, because he was poking his chest out in the comments. And then when I jumped on a live and I said, yeah, I got smoke with you. I got a problem with you and your commentary. Well, I didn't really mean that. But when you was on that keyboard, bro, you was acting crazy with it. That energy is not cool at all with me. And it just reinforced what I thought about the original post. Like if it was I'm just trying to help, then why didn't you say that within the comments? He doubled down on, well, you indie guys are just very sensitive, and you're just proving me right. Like, bro, like what's your purpose here? Like literally, what's your purpose? When it comes to my dealings with indie creators, nobody can question my purpose. Nobody. There's no question. I had an issue with an artist at my convention, a legendary artist at my convention. I still allowed him into my convention and he made a shit ton of money. I could have told his ass to go home because that's what I wanted to do. But I said, it's bigger than me and my personal dealings with these dudes. I know why I'm here, and I allowed him to do what he needed to do. Because I'm never taking these, like, it's at what point are we going to be really invested into it besides acting like we're an authority on everything? Ain't nobody got enough skin in there to act like they can grandstand and generalize and things like no one person has that. I don't care how many books you sold. I don't care how many people you had at your convention. I don't care how many books you edited. I don't care. Like nobody's bigger than the community. Nobody. Not one person. And so when you do some ass backward shit, have some humility, bro. Like stand down. It's cool to be wrong. And we don't need nobody defending these niggas. Stop it. Because again, I had an issue with a legendary artist at my convention. And I said, you know what? It's bigger than me and this personal issue with this brother. Let him cook up. And that took a lot for me to do because I fight. I'm gonna just be very like I want to hurt people, like for real. Especially when you cross that line. But I said, you know what? It's bigger than me, and like I'm gonna just stand. I'm gonna stay out this man's way. People was asking me about him, and I'm like, yeah, go ahead. His art is crazy. Like it still didn't change the way that I felt about his art. And that's the crazy. Like, oh yeah, go ahead, man. His commissions is going for, XYZ. Go get it. Like it really didn't change. And like I could have took it personal, and I could have been like, yeah, don't come in my convention, bro. I don't like what you know what I mean. And so I kind of knew because of his reputation on social media, but I still allowed it. You know what I'm saying? And so like we need to be more invested in trying to provide solutions beyond acting like we an authority on something. Ain't nobody, not one person is an authority on it. Not one person. Not one person. I don't care what you did. We need each other. Like we all need each other. I need Brian. I need Malachi. I need Jason. I need Mike. I need Amani. Like we're so much better together, bro. Like we're so much stronger together. Like, and when people was aggravated in the comments, I just really wish he'd be like, you know what? I did a little too much. I'm gonna go ahead and scale back. There wasn't a point anytime during there, and luckily, the Black Comment Lords took it down. But like, again, we just like I said, the community is too small, and ain't nobody making enough money to be acting like we should be like hypercritical on any one thing. And so the last thing that I want to say about scaling, and that's a point that you hit on in money. Like everybody don't want to scale, bro. Everybody don't want to scale. I mean, that's just no. When people start small businesses, and I know that for a fact because before I even thought about this, Mike said that. Mike said, "I'm creating stories for people. I don't care how much money I make off of it." And it's the same thing with my gym. Like I struggle with the military. When military people come into my gym, I'd be like, and no police. I'm definitely not letting no police officers in my gym, and they're a huge population that needs my services, actively seeks out them. You can't come here, bro. You got to find somewhere else. And I could make a shit ton of money off of that.
I think curating your business is actually one of the things that I engage in as well. And It's not that I don't want to scale, but I think the idea of scaling into a place where where I have to like compromise the books that I want to make is an issue for me. I don't want to be as big as Marvel and DC because that seems like that's a huge endeavor that needs departments, and like I don't hate being a mom and pop style business. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that take. Like, not everybody wants or has to scale. Now, the idea that we're missing a certain amount of black folks that may want to buy our books, that's important to me. I don't want to sound like that, like I'm dismissive of that. But again, the idea of scaling to them, and this is no dig to Black Comics Lords at all, but the idea that I might want to scale for somebody giving me a critique that is sort of in opposition to the thing I'm trying to build, the IPs I'm trying to create, is kind of a problem. And again, not to be dismissive, but how many games in town are we scaling into, or are we scaling up to outside of Black Comics Lords? Because I do shows, people seem pretty seem to jive with the work. I've been critiqued to my face. Again, ain't nobody tripping off critiques, so we could lose that whole idea of black comic creators don't want to be critiqued. But at the same time, like, some of the critiques have been good, way less of them have been bad, and I'm scaling to meet the demand of the type of books that I create. The same way Stephen King might scale to the demand of horror books, or his style of horror books, or the same way Todd McFarlane might scale to his horror superhero style comics, right? Like, I don't like the idea that black creators or black businessmen in general need to scale to people that don't want their work. Like TP, like Tyler Perry said on when he was on the show on Netflix, Black as Fuck. He said, I super serve my audience. He says, I know the mainstream don't care about my stuff. He said, every time we go up for awards, we don't get no awards. We don't get none of that shit. He said, they don't care about my stuff, but I make all this money because I super serve my audience. That's who I want. I want my audience. The assumption is always that we want a broad mainstream audience, or we want just a broader audience. And that's not necessarily the case. And again, all of that said, not to diminish the Black Comics Lords, if in fact those two particular criteria encompasses everybody in that group, which I'm not entirely convinced of. So, I thought I'd jump in. Sorry, Duran.
I feel like I always try to remember Arby's just bought Subway, y'all. You know what I mean? Like, and that's a real good business lesson if you know business and you chart it, right? Arby's been doing roast beef sandwiches for I don't even know how long, and curly fries, right? And everybody always goes around, who's keeping Arby's in business? It's a whole fucking demographic, and they bought what was the biggest fast food chain just 15 years ago. So, I'm sorry to cut it short with my Arby's analogy, but like I said, I got to run. I got to get my day started, y'all. I want everybody to come back again. I do want to shout out real quick. Just let me go back up here real quick. I want to shout out Richard Wright and Black Comics Lords, and say that this and any dialogue we have is not a direct hate to Black Comics Lord or Richard himself, on and on and on, right? We're here, except for Duran, because Duran said, he want the smoke. But no, we wanted to say that I want to say that I'm here to debate the points, right? I'm here to debate the ideology. I'm here to debate what's said. A lot of this stuff gets personal for people, but we don't know each other that kind of personally, right? Like, even if we know each other, we don't know each other that kind of personally. So I'm never going to, unless whoever it is proves themselves to be that person, I'm never going to cast that person as that evil or that antagonist in my life. So I don't want anybody to think that. And I will end it on, again, like I said, I got love for Black Comics Lord. they were able to facilitate kind of this conversation through their group and through this coming up. So we wouldn't have that without them. I'll update you guys, but I definitely want to do this again, maybe another 2 weeks, and really get this going, so that we have an open and honest dialogue just in the community and a couple different voices. All right, I'll talk to y'all.